What's going on YouTube? Ryan Alex back from Dopamon again, and today it's finally mock draft season on the channel. We are here today giving the entirety of the first round in a mock draft in this video, as well as a quickie little scouting report on each of these players and just tell you what we think, what they could bring to each of their new teams. We each have our own because there's absolutely no way in hell we can agree on one video. So we each got our own.
Of course, we're Dopamon. We got talk hockey news, analysis, and mock draft stuff. This isn't going to be the only one. Stick around. We're also going to do round two. And also, go check the channel. We've got a few scouting reports on the top Russians in the draft. We're going to be talking about, going to mention it again. But that is all. Let's move on to the first overall pick. Highly controversial. I know everybody has a different opinion on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to reiterate, like you said, we're going to do a full second round pick. Just so we can get as many picks wrong as possible. These always go a little funny. But yeah, number one overall, I think is fairly easy at this point. There's a little bit of debate. Right now, it's gotten closer than I think it should have been over the last little bit. But I think we can both agree that it will be Shane Wright.
Montreal needs a number one center. And I think that even if Wright doesn't end up being that guy, just a 1B, second line center, whatever, he's a piece that they can really rebuild around instead of tearing down, which they've been doing. This is really like the turning point for them, in my opinion.
Yeah, he's not the kind of guy that's going to win an Art Ross. He's not a generational McDavid type of player, but he still projects to be a great center in the NHL. And the two-way comparisons you're seeing all over the place to Patrice Bergeron are completely warranted. He's incredible at reading the play on the defensive end and is too complete of a player to not take first overall here for me.
And I feel like he got a little bit more, heat in the middle of the season, but towards the end, he really showed why he's worthy of being first overall.
Yeah, as far as stats goes, a little underwhelming is 94 points in 63 games, 32 goals in the OHL, Kingston Frontenacs. He's 6 foot even, on 185 pounds, and he will be the first overall pick this year, without a doubt. You want to do number two? Start us off?
Yeah, I'll do number two. My number two, the New Jersey Devils, in my mock draft, select out of Slovakia, Simon Nemec. It took two really tough decisions for me to make this pick, both in New Jersey taking a defenseman and then a Nemec as the top defenseman between him and Juraj. Other than Wright, probably none of these prospects are going to play a full NHL season next year. So when I think about what New Jersey needs to make them sustainable, successful for the next 10 years, I believe Nemec has the potential to be that key piece that New Jersey needs on the back end. He's mobile, he's good at both ends of the ice, and I feel like a lot of his draft stock having dropped a little bit has to do with him being too good for his league and developing weird, poor habits that will be fixed when he reaches the NHL level. I feel like a lot of the complaints about him and like the cons are a little bit too harsh, and I at the World Juniors had him contending with Wright for first overall. So I've been huge on him, and I think New Jersey will make the right choice and pick him. What do you think?
I think that a guy that you were not huge on to start the year, that I will hold over you if he goes second overall until the day we both die, Juraj Slafkovsky. Now, this is a little bit contentious, I think, with some people. Juraj Slafkovsky is really, really good. I had him 5th overall at the start of the year. He has jumped all the way up to second for me. Alex, you didn't have him in your top 20, I don't think.
I know I had him at the mid-teens.
Oh, okay.
Mid-teens.
We'll say it was worse than it was.
Rose up to 11, and I'd probably I'd keep him in the top 10, but more the 5 to 10 range. That's for being honest.
His stats are, he played in all sorts of leagues this year. 31 games played in Liga, in Turku, TPS Turku, 5 goals, 5 assists, 10 points. Not outstanding. Where he gained a lot of his notoriety was in the international level this year at both the Olympics and the World Championships. 7 goals in 7 games for Slovakia at the Olympics is insane for a 17, 18-year-old undrafted player. And the World Championship, same thing. 8 games, 3 goals, 6 assists for 9 points for the World Championship Slovakia team. Probably the biggest riser overall from the season that for as far as public opinion goes. He's made a pretty good name for himself. And, after the Olympics, kind of had the doubters going, oh, you can't read into one tournament too much, blah, blah, blah. But then he followed it up with another tournament against men, against high competition at 17, 18 years old. I said in October, he's a rare combination of power and skill with a really good set of hands, and I'm taking him here at number 2 for the Devils.
All right.
I will do number 3. And I think we can both agree on this.
We are going to both agree on this one.
We have Logan Cooley going to the Arizona Coyotes. They'll get their number 1 center. They'll get their top center prospect. In 51 games in the U.S. National Team Development Program this year, had 27 goals and 48 assists for 75 points. They desperately need a top-line center out there, and he's a great skater, two-way center, I think, too. He's got a good defensive game. More of a passer than a shooter, but that's going to work really well alongside a big player like Clayton Keller for the Arizona Coyotes in the next few years.
And I think we both agree that Arizona should take a center here, even if, Nemec, in my opinion, who was pretty good, was available. I don't think they should take him. Arizona does not have any center depth. They don't have any high potential centers in their prospect pool either. And historically, they've done a really bad job at drafting centers, especially in the top 5. And Cooley's a guy that I feel like he's a more low risk, no miss kind of draft pick, like maybe even more so than like Shane Wright. He might be like a safer pick in a way. I think he's going to be great. He's a puck magnet, human highlight reel, and he's gotten better, I feel, throughout the season. And I feel like he's going to bring what Arizona needs to spark life into a dying organization.
Yeah, I agree completely with that. I'd have personally, this is the difference between my rankings and my mock draft. I have Arizona selecting Cooley here, but I have Nemec ranked higher as far as it goes. But Arizona is better fit, I think, for Cooley, and Cooley for Arizona as well. That leaves you with 4.
Seattle. At Seattle, I think it's pretty obvious. I have them selecting David Jiricek. I think it's pretty obvious from this year that Seattle didn't build their defense core right, maybe out of the expansion draft. And I feel like they're going to take a little bit more time to become competitive. I'm not super huge on David Jiricek as a top 5 pick. I really see him more of like a 6 to 10 pick. I like him, see the appeal and the potential. I think he just plays an odd style that may limit his ability from being like a number 1 D. But at the same time, the positive parts in his game, I think, are missing from Seattle. And when he does join them, he's just going to be an incredible piece for them.
I agree in concept here because I also have them taking a defenseman, your number 2 pick, Simon Nemec. Last year, they got their number 1 center, Matty Beniers, in the draft. And this year, they're going to get their top defenseman. 1 goal, 26 assists at the Slovakia League this year, top Slovakian League, but his stats are not the thing that matters with this young kid right now. He's an incredible skater, and he's just the most well-rounded guy. And he wasn't playing limited minutes in the men's league last year for Slovakia either. He was playing 20-plus minutes a night as a 17, 18-year-old, being utilized in all situations and in international play, being the top guy and the workhorse on his team. So strong two-way guy, plays well in all situations, very good stick in front of his own net, and Seattle's going to get a steal here at 4. For Philly, for me, we have the same top 5, I believe. I have Philly taking defenseman David Jiricek. I think he just fits Philly for some reason to me. In 29 games this year, 5 goals, 6 assists for 11 points in Czechia League. He got hurt partway through the year. Knee injury slowed him down a little bit, but I don't think it'll affect his rank at all or his draft eligibility here. Elite Prospects, funny enough, has David Jiricek as the highest ranked defenseman in this year's draft over Simon Nemec. And while he's definitely the more physical of the two, I think Jiricek isn't going to be as well-rounded a guy as Nemec already is. He's an amazing pick here for the Flyers. But for now, I have them taking the number 2D in the draft, David Juraj.
That leaves me to me. I have Philadelphia selecting Juraj Slafkovsky. We do have the same top 5 here. There is so much hype around him, especially like you said, the way he represented Slovakia internationally and helped grow them to be one of the top hockey countries. So it might sound crazy taking him at just 5, but I think there's a little bit of reason. Being a winger, there's always a little bit less draft stock. Historically, whenever there's like a real competition between a winger and a center in the top 5, it always goes to the center. But I also see him just being a good fit in Philly. They're an older team, and the idea of him bringing like youth to an older team is kind of reminiscent of that Olympics. That Olympic run where he broke all sorts of goal scoring records on a more veteran team. He just brought this youth and life into it, and I think he could do that for Philly and maybe join a little bit more sooner and click in their top 6. So I have a good feeling just about him being successful in Philly.
Yeah, he's going to be a guy I wouldn't be surprised is brought over to North America rather quickly when whatever team drafts him. Because I think he's AHL eligible based on, don't quote me on that, but I do think he is AHL eligible. Anyway.
They all are. Except unless you're from Russia or a Canadian junior.
Yeah, that's what I mean, because he's from Finland. Anyway.
Yeah.
Or Slovakia, Finnish league. Is that me for 6 or you for 6? Me for 6, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, me for 6. Me for 6, but we're the same. We are the same.
Oh, cool.
We agree. Matthew Savoie.
Yeah, Matthew Savoie, Winnipeg Ice, WHL, 5'9", 179 pounds, 65 games this year, 35 goals, 55 assists for 90 points. Big points. My previous rankings had him second, my second choice behind Shane Wright, and I'm still higher on him, I think, in my rankings than most people are at this point. I've seen him slip down as far as like mid-teens on some mock drafts, and I think that's a little too much. He plays bigger than his 5'9" frame would suggest and is one of the best offensive skill sets in this whole draft. And he's a center, so that has to be said for something here. I think there's improvement to be had, but I think Columbus is more than willing to pick him up here as their center of the future, quote-unquote, at 6th overall. It's not a bad pick.
Yeah, I've definitely found him to be a sort of one-dimensional kind of offensive player, but that one dimension, like his ability to move the puck and drive offense to the slot, is just probably the best in the entire draft. And I do see maybe his draft stock falling because some people think he might get transitioned to the wing. So maybe they don't see a center, but I think that Columbus could instill their tighter defensive game into him, make him a complete, kind of skater, and be that number 1. For them. And I think they also have Columbus has a perfect balance of youth and guys like Sillinger, Laine, Chenikov, but also veterans like Voracek, Nyquist, and Bjorkstrand that he could really generate some crazy, incredible offense with.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a couple years that he breaks into the NHL, but I think he could. I think honestly he could be a winger. He could be a solid winger, and even at 6 overall, his skill set that he brings, I'd still draft him here at number 6. The big pick for you. The Ottawa Senators at 7th overall.
I think that means you go first, though.
You go first because it's Ottawa.
Okay, I will.
Just because it's Ottawa.
I have Ottawa drafting Joakim Kemmel. These two are the 2 biggest trick ponies in the top 10 for me in this draft. This last year, Ottawa took, at 10th overall, Tyler Boucher. And in my opinion, it looked like they had completely slept on their pick and started picking from like the 2nd round. Like if you look at each pick that they made, they sort of, it seems like that the next pick is the one they should. Yeah. So who knows for sure? Maybe, they can go completely off the board again and I go for a panic. But I think, I want to attribute some of that to Pierre Dorion thinking that Ottawa was ready to be a playoff team and kind of drafting for like want instead of the best player available. And I hope they've learned that lesson so that they're going to be in the middle here and they're going to draft Joakim Kemmel, who might not be the top player, ranked available, but I think he's the type of goal scorer that Ottawa needs to fill out their top 6. he's the guy that started the season uh in the SM Liga, just playing so incredibly well. At one point, he was like leading in points, leading in goals as a 17-year-old, and then he got injured and hasn't been, quite been the same since. Definitely, some of it was a hot streak. He was scoring from places he shouldn't have been scoring. Those low percentage shots were going in, but I think he has the potential to score so much, and Ottawa can deal with a guy who's a little bit streaky and scores kind of goals like that because they have a good mix of forwards already, and he'll just slide right in and score 35 goals, and that's what Ottawa needs.
I have them drafting for a similar kind of player here. I have them taking 6'2", 190-pound winger Cutter Gauthier, U.S. National Team Development Program player. I have lost my notes. Give me a minute. Okay, there we go. 54 games played, 34 goals, 31 assists for 65 points. Committed to Boston College for next season, so he's not coming up right away. But like you said, who knows what Ottawa's going to do with this pick, considering last year. A little bit bonkers, but I feel like Cutter is just a good fit for the Senators as kind of a power winger with great release and great, specifically a good transition game. Senators like to play that kind of fast transition, be the pesky Sens brand kind of thing, and I think he fits right in. Similar-ish player to Kemmel in the fact that he has, that elite shot. So we are having similar choices here, but I don't think...
Yeah, we're addressing the same need.
Yeah, we are addressing the same need. Both wingers, both shooters, and complementary pieces to guys they already have, Stutzla and Norris down the middle and stuff like that. So it'll be a good pick, I think, here for Ottawa. Now, number 8. Number 8 is... I have no explanation for this, so don't ask me to explain why.
Me neither, because I agree.
But Brad Lambert is going to be a Detroit Red Wing. I have no reasoning behind this. I just feel that it's a really good fit in Detroit, and you do too. I know we talked about this, and Stevie Y knows what he's doing. Otherwise, we may end up seeing like an Atu Ratu-esque slide from last year, and I think undeservedly so. Maybe a little inconsistent, but playing in the men's league for JYP and the Pelicans this year. 2 goals, 4 assists for JYP, and 2 goals, 2 assists for only 4 points there on his other team, the Pelicans. Didn't put up the highest numbers, but he's just too good the tools are way too good. At one point, this was the clear-cut number 2. I can't have him drop any further than this, guys. I really can't.
And for me, it's definitely his struggles in the adult pro league. When you watch him play against his peers at his own age group, like the World Juniors, he just completely, blew the competition out of the
incredible,
water. He showed, and he was able to exhibit all the skills, the power, the speed, and everything that he had. That's just not clicking at the pro league, and that's okay. They're 17, 18 years old. They're getting there, and you can't just look at the stats and be like, oh, he only scored X amount of goals. He could never score more in the NHL. It's like, no, this is a teenager. Look at how much room he has to grow. And I agree. I think it's going to be great. Not only just like a totally an Yzerman pick, but a good fit for Detroit, another center, and, just to help them through this rebuild that they're going through. And yeah, I agree.
That leaves you for the Buffalo Sabres at 9.
I have them selecting Frank Nazar III, or Nazar.
Yep.
I don't know why Nazar's fallen on so many people's draft lists. I think he's an incredible puck handler. He can beat defenders with his skill, drive to the slot, and I feel like he brings the type of offense that kind of it scores at the NHL level. He brings like a really unique type of skill set that I feel is kind of missing in this draft a lot. And he really stepped up even as a center in the second line center at the U18s and that silver medal for the United States behind Logan Cooley. I think he really stepped up, and he's a really much more complete player than people realize. And in Buffalo, I think that he could also kind of bring a healthy competition for the top center there as well. For the U18s, he was kind of like a 1-2 behind Logan Cooley, and I think he might not be the number 1 center for Buffalo, but he might kind of give some competition for center and, have players kind of fighting to, score more. And that's a good thing. Some healthy competition on your roster to fight for a number one position. And in 3 to 5 years, when he does break into the NHL, Buffalo is a team that they've shown they have some, some potential here to become a, playoff contender. And I think he could just join them and they'll be a good part of their success.
I have them taking a winger. I have them taking someone who you have already taken in Joakim Kemmel. Sorry. Like you said, got injured, cooled off this year, had 15 goals in 39 games overall, but 9 in his first 12. He started off on fire and then only scored 6 goals for the rest of the year in Liga. Men's League and Liga, so there's something to be said about that. Still knows how to shoot. Great shooter. Wide variety of ways to beat a goalie. It's not just a wrist shot or a snap shot. He can do a lot of things with the puck. And there's something to be said for that in the sense that, he's not as a one-dimensional offensive shooter. He can do a lot of things with the puck. And Buffalo's going to continue to stockpile great offensive prospects here with Kemmel. And watch for Buffalo in this draft. They have a lot of really good picks. They're kind of an under-the-radar team to have. Everyone's talking about how many picks Arizona has or Anaheim has. Buffalo has a ton of picks, and they're all coming in perfect spots. They're going to have the best draft. I'll say it right now. They're going to have the best results based on the players that I have them picking anyway. It's kind of nuts. Anyway, number 10, the Anaheim Ducks. Now, I don't like this player. Personally, this is where the difference between my draft and a rankings kind of butt heads a little bit. I have them taking Jonathan Lekkerimäki. Lekkerimäki's a centerman, Djurgården's IF, mostly in the June 20 leagues, but he played 26 games up in the SHL, split between there and the Junior 20. Junior 20 had 20 goals, 15 assists for 35 points. Definitely a work in progress. Past his elite shooting, I can't find much else here to be excited about personally. Since the consensus is a lot higher on him, I have him higher in my draft. Otherwise, he'd probably slip into maybe the 20s for me. Work in progress, like I said, and he's a wet pool noodle defensively. He's horrendous. I don't know what it is. I agree he has some potential and is a good shooting trigger man to be in the NHL. I think I hate making player comparisons, but I've heard Mike Hoffman. I like that comparison. I've also heard William Nylander. I don't like that as much just because he's Swedish and doesn't want to play defense. I think that's just people trolling. Mike Hoffman, I think, is a good comparison.
All right, that brings me for Anaheim, where I have them selecting Pavel Mintyukov out of the OHL as a left shot D. I feel like every year we talk about Anaheim drafting for offense, and I feel like they're going to do it again. Mintyukov is that high risk, high reward offensive defenseman that's managed to score almost a point per game on a very low scoring Saginaw Spirit team in the OHL, where he leads all first year draft eligible defenders in points. For Anaheim, Mintyukov could be a huge asset to a team that's consistently near the bottom of the league. And I don't want to play armchair GM too much, but I will. I think he'll be a great partner for Drysdale one day. I think that Mintyukov and Drysdale could just be in a crazy pair. And, if you're worried about Anaheim's future, you want to start on the back end, I feel like this would be the pick for it.
That's our top 10. I'm just going to reload our blockers here so I don't spoil anything. And we're going to start with you, I think, at 11, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. At 11, I have the San Jose Sharks selecting Denton Mateychuk. Now, San Jose hasn't drafted a D in the first 2 rounds since 2019. And if they're going to fix their defensive problems and properly rebuild, they need to stock up a little bit more on defensemen, in my opinion. This is also the only pick they have in the first 2 rounds, so if they're going to break that the habit or streak of not selecting D, they have to do it here. And I don't know if they're in a position to really trade any assets. Maybe Timo Meier. I really don't think he'll be traded now, probably at the deadline. the best move I think for them is to select a D, and Matejchuk is a guy that definitely has the potential to be a top pairing guy. And I feel like San Jose has the experienced older guys that can maybe help him transition into the league, give him that guidance, while they also have in their, their prospect pool for D, these kind of like mid-tier prospects they've sort of already built around. Like they already have like a future, mid-level core that Matejchuk, I think, could just lead and be that number one D. And they already have some of the pieces to for the future. But I think Matejchuk is what he brings is missing, and that's why I have him.
And I completely agree here. San Jose, I think, is due to pick a defenseman here. Left shot D for the Moose Jaw Warriors, 5'11", 180. Is listed on EPs. It's 65 games, like you said, 13 goals, 51 assists here in the WHL. There's a lot of good D prospects in this draft, and San Jose really needs to start filling its cupboard back up. But I think Matejchuk here is a candidate for potential best defenseman to come out of this draft. I kid you not. And I'm actually going to quote. I've never done this before. I'm actually going to quote from Elite Prospect Scouting Report, because I don't think I can do a better job explaining what I mean. And I quote, "It's like he's everywhere all at once, shouldering an enormous burden for his team like it's nothing at all, cueing the breakout, leading the rush, or joining as a trailer, supporting the puck, leading the forecheck, yes, seriously, shutting it down between the blue lines and containing in small area defensive scenarios." He's just a fun player to watch, and it'll be really cool to see him develop in the next couple of years. Like you said, the older guys in San Jose might be really helpful for him. I just think he's hasn't been talked enough about him being one of the better defensemen coming out of this draft.
I agree. And you don't expect water bugs out of defensemen.
No.
And he kind of is, and he's all over the ice and he can do it all effectively. He's not a one-dimensional, he's not, high risk kind of thing. He's doing it all. Yeah.
Yeah, he skates well. He's all over the place. Number 12, the Columbus Blue Jackets, their second pick already. I have them here taking Pavel Mintyukov. Second straight defenseman here for me. I have them one more down from you. Russian prospect that plays in the OHL, so he didn't make your list of Russian prospects. And I'm curious where he would have gone if he was playing in Russia. That's my question.
Yeah, it would be very different.
Yeah. Where would he rank for you if he was included on your list?
I'd probably put him second behind, or maybe third behind Miroshnichenko and Yurov. But playing, if I were doing like draft prospect rankings and stuff like that, I feel like maybe he'd be a guy that falls. I've noticed that when Russian players come over to play, mostly in the OHL, a few in the Q, a few in the W, but mostly in the OHL, that ups their draft stock. I don't know if it's because they get scouted easier. I don't know if it's because, they have agents that are American or Canadian and they're more familiar with GMs and stuff like that. But definitely playing in North America has upped his draft stock a little bit, but also given him an opportunity to just, perform in a North American system. And I think scouts appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you haven't seen, that was just a call out to Alex's scouting reports. If you haven't seen those on his channel, go check them out. He has a few of them up there with video.
Yes, with video. I'm about to get to that because at 12, I have Danila Yurov.
Hey.
Yeah, Columbus selecting Danila Yurov. Yurov's draft stock has dropped a lot, but Columbus is known to draft well out of Russia, and I think they'd be willing to take a chance on him if he was still available. There's not much I can say about Yurov. As Ryan mentioned, I've already made a full scouting report on him, video and all. Please go check that out. Seriously, full video breaking down his strengths, weaknesses. It's on the channel or in the description or in some kind of bubble around me right now. I don't know. It's somewhere. So go check it out. I put a lot of work into it.
Yeah, I have them taking a defenseman here on the forward. They have a good group of defense prospects. They have Stan Svozil, Samuel Konashko, Carson Kuhlmans, but I still think Mintyukov would be the best out of that group. So I think best player available, Mintyukov is the way to go. Yurov, though, also no slouch. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, Mintyukov isn't available in mine, so I had I went for Yurov, but I do like your pick. We both have a Russian here.
Yeah, Thomas has done that before. Is this you for 13?
It is me, and a person that you have drafted at 10, Jonathan Lekaramaki. Uh, we had actually talked earlier about whether or not this would be a Lou Lamoriello type pick.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of came to the conclusion, if, I know you don't like the comparison to William Nylander, but if he'd be willing to take Nylander at 8, I think he'd be willing to take Lekaramaki at 13 any
Yeah,
day. And I feel like the Islanders are going through some sort of retooling,
a little
reorganization
bit.
after
Yeah,
deciding, not to re-sign Barry Trotz. And a player like Lekaramaki, as one-dimensional as he may be, he brings so much pure offensive skill that, when they do need to pull out of their retool and, they're searching for goals or score, something, scoring is going to be right there. They don't have to worry about, who's going to score goals. They have a great goal scoring prospect whenever they do pull out of this. And I don't want to play armchair GM too much, but I will. Again, I think, Matthew Barzal just turned 24 years old and he has a long career ahead of him still. New York, could, they're in a position to kind of retool and have Barzal as their number one center and still, have a, good organization going forward. And I think pairing his ability to carry the puck with Lekaramaki's ability to finish can be a devastating combo. And when they do restructure, whenever it's over, I have a feeling that they're going to play together.
yeah, I could see that. I mean, top line center, top line winger. So might as well put them together at least for some things here. I have the New York Islanders selecting Marco Kasper. I feel like he's a Lou pick. Center out of Rogel in the SHL, 6'2", 187 pounds. In the SHL this year, in 47 games, he played up there a lot. Had 7 goals and 4 assists for 11 points. Big power center, seems to be in front of the net on every single shift, and that's where he's gotten most of his goals in offense. That's where the goals go. Biggest question mark for me, whether this guy has that kind of high level creativity you need from a center. But he's a young kid in the SHL. He's just figuring it out. He does have those tools. Has a motor he just can't turn off, and plays a good physical net front game. So, and has a touch of scoring ability. So why not here at 13? I'm excited to see how he plays in the SHL, assuming he'll stay over in Sweden the next few years. Excited to see him a year older, more experienced, stronger. See how he goes against men at 19, 20 years old. Winnipeg.
And you might as well really reveal both, because we do agree again here.
Yes. We got Conor Geekie. I think this just makes too much sense, don't you?
The Winnipeg Ice being drafted by the Winnipeg Jets. Yeah.
He's a Manitoba boy playing in the WHL Winnipeg. He's going to be picked by Winnipeg. I get that. 6'4", 205 pounds, 63 games this year, 24 goals and 46 assists for 70 points for a good Winnipeg Ice team. I'm still a little bit worried, and I said this earlier in one of our earlier mocks, that he's a little bit of a Dylan Strome type pick rather than a top of your lineup center. But he's 6'4", and teams aren't going to overlook that. So his skating is definitely the weakest part of his game, but I think he has really good hands, and we might see him grow into a really good, at worst, second line center. Definitely has a lot of work to do, though. But I think the tools are all there for him to be a really good centerman for Winnipeg, who might be on the rebuild train soon.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of, I don't know if Blake Wheeler stays in Winnipeg, but if he does, I think he could really teach Conor Geekie how to use his size a little bit more effectively. So if I were Winnipeg and I was thinking about making this draft pick, I'd consider keeping Wheeler around.
Yeah, we'll see what Winnipeg does, obviously, in the offseason. 15 to me? No, 15 to you.
That's 15 to me. Where I have the Vancouver Canucks selecting Marco Kasper, the Austrian playing out of Sweden. Right?
Yep.
Yes, he is. I feel like there's always rumors about players leaving Vancouver. Right now it's JT Miller. I'm like, oh, is he gonna go? It's like, well, they could just re-sign him. Whether he leaves or not, I think it kind of shows how volatile their forward group can be, especially down the middle. And as far as draft history, the last two centers that Vancouver has drafted out of the first two rounds, so in the first 60, 64, whatever, the last two were Elias Pettersson in 2017, and before that, Bo Horvat in 2013. So they have a good track record when selecting centers, but they haven't selected a lot of centers, and I think they need it. They're kind of running out of centers in their prospect pool. They can add a few, and Marco Kasper, yeah, like you said, he's a dominating forward. I think he could give Vancouver a real competitive edge that I think that they've been missing a little bit, regardless of their coaching. I think that that's something that's been missing from their roster that he could add that they don't have.
Yeah, I agree with everything. That's a good point for centerman in Vancouver. I have them also taking a forward. I have them taking a Russian. I have them taking Danila Yurov. They keep drafting Russians. They just signed another one. They drafted Vasily Podkolzin, much to your dismay, a few years ago. 23 games in the MHL, 13 goals, 23 assists, 21 games in the KHL, but 0 points. We can talk about how dumb it is that the KHL and the Russian system bring guys up and then play them 0 minutes a night. It's kind of strange. Please stop doing that. KHL, that doesn't help anybody. Doesn't help the player. Doesn't help scouts like us. Doesn't help NHL teams watching them. Doesn't help your team. Stop doing that.
Doesn't develop the game, doesn't develop the player. It's harmful.
Just stop it. Stop doing that. Keep them down where they are or bring them up and play them in a role. Don't do this, sit them on the bench and let them watch the game. They can do that at home. I can't say anything you haven't already gone over in your scouting reports. So if you want a full report on him, check them out, like you said, below. And or in the card or wherever we have them, and just on the channel. And yeah, keep them down in the MHL, for crying out loud. Okay. 16 is a guy that I've had drop down my mock a little bit that you've already picked. Frank Nazar.
To the same team.
Yeah, funny enough.
Yeah.
Same team, same idea. I have him dropping a little bit. I'd have him way, way higher in my personal rankings. Had 28 goals and 42 assists this year in 56 games with the U.S. National Team Development Program. Like I said, Buffalo's going to have a killer draft. And adding Kemmel in my mock earlier, they're going to have another great forward here in Frank Nazar. Personally, like I said, way higher. Plays with speed, shooting, passing, hockey sense are all there. One of the highest ceilings in this draft, I think. Has the most potential that he could work with at 5'10", big enough. Yeah, I think he could be a really good player. Not a boomer bust pick by any means. He could still be a middle of the lineup guy, but he's got so much potential. That's why I'd rank him higher, but I think he's going to slip just a little bit for some reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've definitely seen that too, but I feel like Buffalo's willing to, because they have so many picks in this draft, make a few adjustments, pick guys that they want, maybe reach down a little bit, pick the right player. And speaking of a little bit of a reach, I have at 16 Buffalo selecting Ivan Miroshnichenko.
Mm-hmm.
I think Ivan Miroshnichenko will get drafted by a team. If not here, it's going to be a team that has multiple first-round picks, like Buffalo, Montreal, Arizona. But last year, Buffalo took some really, really interesting draft picks out of Russia in the second round. So I have just this feeling that they're going to go for him in this one as well. Ivan Miroshnichenko, it's one of the saddest stories in hockey all year. Was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma cancer. I've made a whole. Not only do we on the channel recognize him as for the E.J. Maguire Award of Excellence for the draft prospect that exemplifies courage and all that. I also have a full scouting report on him to break down his game. I know I'm not a medical expert or a doctor. From the reports I've heard, it looks like a positive step in his recovery and treatment. So I think NHL teams should be high on him. Ivan Miroshnichenko is one of the greatest goal scorers in this draft. And I know for a fact that he is a fighter. And when he does come back, he's going to push it. So I have Buffalo selecting him at 16.
Yes, well said. Absolutely.
And that moves me on to 17 for Nashville. I have them selecting Kevin Korchinski. Nashville's shown that they need a little bit more offense from their D than just Roman Yossi. I feel like we can definitely see a little bit more out of Dante Fabro that's there, but not too much more. I feel like he might have just, might be at his ceiling. And while they have some like really good mid-tier defensive prospects, I don't think any of them are going to be anywhere near Yossi at this point. Like none of the prospects they have are going to be even close. So I don't think Korchinski is gonna be good, as good as Yossi defensively, but he definitely has the potential to be as good as Yossi offensively, maybe almost just as close. Yossi's 32 now and will probably be about 35 when Korchinski and most of this draft class really gets their, first look in the NHL. So I think it's just a good roster management for Nashville to take a D at this spot.
Yeah, Nashville pumps out D like no other team in the NHL, man. Every good D in the last 15 years seems to come out of Nashville. For me, I have them taking a forward, and I have them taking a forward that I personally would not draft as high. But I think the consensus is a little higher on him because he played very, very well at the U18s, and that's Isaac Howard. Another American out of the U.S. National Team Development Program, 5'10", 178 pounds, 33 goals, 49 assists through 60 games down there. All the great tools are there with Howard, but he just doesn't have good sense with the puck for some reason. Every time I watch him, great off the puck player, great compliment to a line, but the play can die on his stick sometimes. So a little bit of a work in progress for me, but I think he played out of his mind in the U18s, and all of those negatives that I saw weren't really there. So maybe he's figured something out. Maybe because of the recency bias, Nashville takes him here at 17.
And I have him in my first, but I'll talk about him a little bit later when I get to him.
Sounds good. Dallas, for me at 18, I have them taking one away from you here, Kevin Korchinski. I think kind of when it comes to draft defense prospects, we don't really talk about Korchinski enough. He had 4 goals, 61 assists in Seattle and WHL this year. He's 6'2". As much as he's described as a high risk, high reward kind of player, it's exactly the kind of player you go for at 18th, 17th overall for you. I think they're already losing a Kevin Korchinski, Dallas, this year, and John Klingberg. I don't think he'll be back. That being said, if you can teach him even a shred of defense, you might end up with one of the better defensemen in this draft. You don't have to, a player like this, he doesn't have to be an all-world defensive player. The things he can do in the offensive zone are incredible, and I think Dallas takes him here.
That brings me to Dallas at 18, and I have them selecting Cutter Gauthier. You have him, what was it, 9th to Ottawa? I have him a little bit
7th.
further down. Now, I think Gauthier will absolutely be a complimentary forward at the NHL level. Play any position, fill any role. At worst, I see third line center, but going further he goes up the roster, like the less I see him just clicking. I definitely see, like the scoring aspect, but the higher he goes up the roster, I feel like he isn't gonna, just click there. He's gonna be a good scorer, but not one that like really leads his team offensively in a way. Like I feel like some of the other top guys in this draft do. Yeah, he can shoot, but he doesn't have the multiple scoring, abilities, the multiple ways that he scores, and creative offense. I feel like he's just really good, and I can't have him in my top 10, and I feel like he's maybe a more mid-teens kind of thing. And I want to talk about why Dallas, because you're right, they're losing some D, but at the same time, uh, they've done a really good job at taking these supposed middle six forwards and getting the best out of them. We're looking at guys like
Jason
Roope
Robertson.
Hintz. Yeah, Jason Robertson, Roope Hintz, even Dennis Gurianov a little bit, but they're stuck right now with Tyler Sagan and Jamie Benn, which might be in, 2 of the top 5 worst contracts in the league right now.
Yeah.
And at least according to Cap Friendly, buying them out would save in 1 year less than $5 million, and the rest of it they'd just be paying more. It's not even worth it to
You
buy them
can't buy
out.
them out.
Exactly. And they can't afford to re-sign Klingberg because if they do, they have to re-sign Ottinger and Robinson, but then they won't have enough money to re-sign Hintz and Gurionov next year, let alone have, the small contracts to put a full roster together. I feel like they're in a similar position that Chicago was after their success, and that they're going to be forced to move some of these forward prospects. I think, maybe even at this draft, they're going to have to trade a guy like Hintz or Gurionov out. And to replace these forwards, I think that they're going to draft Cutter Gauthier. So that's my explanation for this one.
I love it. It's wild logic, but I love it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cap hell. That's the only reason why.
Cap hell. 19, Alex.
19. I have them selecting Liam Ogren out of Sweden, and this just feels like a very LA pick to me. Something kind of you would say.
Yep.
They have good center depth right now, so I think that they'll be looking for more of like a dependable winger that is known to, have good chemistry and bounce off of maybe the more dynamic offensive players. And Ogren was part of that Djurgården's line with Lekaramaki and Östlund. And while each were exceptional in their own way, I felt like Ogren stood out for being dependable, able to transition the non-offense side of the game to the pro league quicker than his line mates did. And I think he'll also be able to transition to the NHL level pretty quick. And just like he did there, be just a solid, good guy, a good winger to bounce off of, some of the good centers that LA has and continue their retool, rebuild that they're going through. I like what LA has.
LA's got a ton of prospects, and I have them taking a guy that might be have a lot of upside, but some people question whether he's fit for the NHL. I have Filip Mesar here. Slovakia is going to be insane in a few years. He's 5'10", he's 8 goals, 8 assists, and 16 points, 37 games in the Slovakia league this year, prop red. Dynamic forward, good pace, incredible skater, but I feel like he has the skills to be like a top 10 pick in this draft, honestly, but his size kind of detracts from that. It's not that he's short. He just kind of doesn't play to contact well. Little better if he can, improve on that and create, more inside, pressure onto the inside of the ice and in front of the net. I think he could be a really good NHL player. I think LA has the prospect capital already to take a flyer on this guy at 19, and I think he fits really well. But yeah, Slovakia's international future is looking quite bright.
Mm-hmm. And why don't we hop to me for 20, because I have Washington selecting at 20, Filip Mesar. I think with Backstrom out, and there always being some kind of controversy surrounding Kuznetsov, I think it shows how volatile Washington can be down the middle. Mesar might have the chance, maybe not, to play with Ovechkin. If so, not for a very long time. So with a pick like this, you kind of have to look at, how are they going to fit into the Ovechkinless era? How will they, I think he's good at both ends. He shows flashes, like you said, of achieving a much higher potential. I think at times you can watch his game and be like, yeah, he's a top 10 pick, but at times you watch him and you're like, a third round pick or something. So I think there's, a little bit there, but I think that also shows he is always just a reliable player. He's gonna be, a top 9 guy. And I think in Washington, if he gets the chance to maybe play with Ovechkin, maybe he can get the best of his game out through Ovechkin, kind of the way I think Backstrom did.
Yeah, that's a great point. I like that comparison a lot. Washington, for me, is going to take a guy we've talked about already, and Ivan Miroshnichenko. I think he's got all the tools, honestly, to be a top 10, even a top 5 pick. He's that skilled. But the diagnosis coupled with the Russia factor, which we haven't actually brought up at all today, might cause him to slide pretty dramatically in the draft. I wouldn't be surprised if he even drops out of the first round. We'll see, but I have him at 20 here because I feel like Washington is just an excellent fit, I think, for obvious reasons. Alex Ovechkin is there. Another, top Russian player in the NHL, the top Russian player, and I think Washington will fill in Miroshnichenko here nicely.
Yeah, and there are many comparisons between Miroshnichenko and Ovechkin, so
Yeah.
it seems only fitting.
Yeah, as
And yeah,
crazy
I
as it
definitely
sounds.
I've seen a lot of people ranking Miroshnichenko right at 33. You know,
Yeah.
it's a way of them saying, yeah, he's great, but because of the diagnosis, just not in the first round. So I could maybe see him dropping, but I like him. You know, you have him at 20, I have him at 16. Clearly, he deserves to be in the top 10 when he's healthy, but the draft, there's always these question marks.
Absolutely. Hit us with the Pittsburgh.
So I have Pittsburgh going a little bit off the board for with Tristan Leno, the right shot D out of the QMJHL. Pittsburgh, they're another team in a position like Washington where they have to pick, they're considering their future without their superstars. They have to worry about Crosby, Malkin, who's coming back. Is Leno going to be part of it? It might be a reach. I don't think Leno has met the expectations set out for him at the beginning of the season, but he's still shown a lot of that really big upside, and in a way kind of reminds me of Chris Letang on Pittsburgh right there. And they've also drafted Isaac Beliveau out of Gatineau in the QMJHL last year, who is on the same team. I don't think they've played together too much, but they will in the coming years in juniors and might make transitioning to the pro league a little bit easier. And I feel like if Pittsburgh's been watching their own defensive prospect, then they've definitely also been watching Leno. Maybe there's a connection there. Maybe I'm a conspiracy theorist on this one, but I like this pick.
I think this is the first pick, and correct me if I'm wrong, the first pick that either one of us had taken that I don't have in my first round. I don't think I have Leno in my first round. It's the first one at 21. So far, we've been So far, we've been pretty similar, but this is the first one that drops off the board for me. For me, I have Pittsburgh taking Rutger McGroarty. One of the best names in the draft. 6'1", 205 pounds. 54 games this year in U.S. national team program at 35 goals and 34 assists, 69 points. Nice. I think it's a gut feeling. I think I have to consider what GM is picking. And Rutger McGroarty feels like a Hextall Berkey pick. He just has that kind of power to him. Committed to the University of Michigan next year. So he's going to go into a great program in the NCAA. Doesn't quite have his skating down. That's the biggest knock on him, but he could still project to a very powerful, very good winger in the NHL. Anaheim at 22. Now I had Anaheim at 10 taking Jonathan Lekkerimäki out of Djurgårdens. And here I have them taking Liam Öhgren out of Djurgårdens. They're teammates. They both play on the same line all year. And I think that's just funny. So I'm going to take Liam Öhgren here. 30 games in the junior league. In 30 games, had 33 goals, 58 points, and 2 points in 25 games in the SHL in the men's league. Personally, I have Öhgren ranked much higher than either of his line mates, and is a guy I would seriously consider picking in the top 10. Personally, on my rankings, he's got this deceptive Austin Matthews style snap hook release thing that he's got on his shot down, that he can become a serious goal scoring threat at higher levels. Like I said, he did score 33 and 30 in the U20 in Sweden, and I just think he could be a really, really good player. Anaheim's got a lot of good forwards, and I know I've taken another forward here, but they have some more picks coming up, and there's a lot of good defensemen in this draft. I think the ceiling on Liam Öhgren is too high.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had the Anaheim selecting a defenseman at 10, so I also have a Swedish forward being picked out of Anaheim here. But Liam Öhgren for me was picked at 19. I like him. I think he's pretty good. I was a little bit lower on Öhgren to start the season. I thought of him just as a kind of a two-way guy.
Me too.
But he's really shown, he in a weird way reminds me of like Brad Lambert.
Kinda.
In a weird but not as good. It's just something that...
Less dynamic.
Yeah. So moving on for my pick, I have them selecting Noah Ostlund. For me, that's the final three of the Djurgårdens line. Ostlund was really much higher on my list early in the season, and I'm probably still really high on him, more so than other scouts. I think he's one of the best playmakers in the draft, if not like the most like just as pure playmakers, he might be like the best of that style. He kind of reminds me of Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and I think that he could fill the same kind of role for Anaheim as a sort of third behind Zegras and McTavish, who are both, out of this world forwards. He can play, up and down the roster in their top nine, maybe on the wing, with Zegras, maybe on the third line, Zegras, McTavish, Ostlund. I think he can fly up and down the top nine. So I think there's a lot of versatility to him, and that would make him, help Anaheim be a contender for a long time. Uh, I like him. I think he's great. I have him ranked a little bit higher, but Anaheim at 22. And that brings me to St. Louis at 23. And I know you like this guy a little bit, but won't have him dropping to Toronto or anything. Owen Pickering. Sorry to spoil yours. I know you like him.
Boo.
Yeah. St. Louis does not have a deep prospect pool for defensemen. The last time they picked a D in the first round was Jordan Schmaltz in 2012. St. Louis has kind of exceeded my expectations after having lost Pietrangelo, but I still think that defense is something that they need to address. At standing 6'5", Owen Pickering addresses a lot of big questions for the future. He's still growing into his body, and I feel like he might be a little bit more of a late bloomer compared to the others drafted around this spot around him. But for his size, he's still one of the more mobile skaters in this draft, and as he grows, he'll just continue to improve. And the pace that he plays at, and with such a strong effort, it's always clear when you watch, like you can see the hard work on the ice, and he'll continually try and reach that next level. And I think that the Blues can kind of use that competitive, aggressive, always wants to, better himself kind of attitude. And I feel like they're a team willing to invest time and wait on a defenseman that might take a few more years than others to get into the league.
It's great logic. Because they don't generally draft defensemen, I'm going to say they continue that trend rather than try to buck it off. I have St. Louis here taking Jimmy Snuggerud, and this is probably my first pick that might be a reach for some people in the first round. I just think he's just a safe pick here for St. Louis. He's 6'2". He scored 24 goals in 59 games, 63 points in the U.S. National Team Development Program, another American. Doesn't have the same kind of deceptive quickness as some of his other U.S. Teammates do higher in this draft, but which could mean he slides out of the first round completely, like I said. But I think St. Louis is just getting a really solid winger here and good skills that could translate into a middle six supportive winger somewhere down the road. And I think that just fits St. Louis's system a little better than taking a guy like Owen Pickering here. This one will piss Alex off. I have the Minnesota Wild taking my boy, Gleb, the Gleb Trikazov, center right wing out of Omsky in the MHL, 6'1", 185 pounds, had 23 goals and 22 assists, 35 games here in the MHL. He just has that for me. He has that ability on the puck with his stick that just screams NHL level creativity and smarts for me. It's not something that you can necessarily quantify in any way. It's just you watch him play and you go, that's an NHL player. And sometimes he isn't able to fully pull off the plays that he feels like he wants to make. But the fact that he's thinking and creating this kind of offense, it's that high of a level, is why I have him in a little bit higher esteem than you do. We've gone back and forth on whether Gleb should even be a first round pick. I just think he's just got that factor that Minnesota's going to love. It's similar to, maybe not as high ceiling, but to Kirill Kaprizov is obvious comparison in Minnesota there already. And I think they just need good, creative playmaking players, especially in the forward group. I don't know if that's the avenue they're going down. They seem to be a little bit of a bigger, harder to play against team, but inject a little bit of skill in that lineup, I think puts them over the edge in a few years, especially with the issues of their cap in the next few years. He might be a guy that could step in a couple years and really help them with that.
Yeah, I agree on a lot of what you say about him as far as scouting. And in case those of you who don't know, I do have a full report on Gleb Trykozov as well. That's going to be a link in the description below, maybe a bubble around me, maybe in the suggested videos. But if you're interested in seeing a full video scouting report, strengths, weaknesses on Gleb Trykozov, please go check out that video. Personally, I think he has incredible amounts of skill. But yeah, putting it together sometimes is a huge question mark because decision making is a little bit wonky for me, and I have him. I wrote, spoiler alert for me, I have him 47th to Minnesota, so I definitely see the fit in the team, but I don't see the as high draft projection.
Yeah.
But for Minnesota at 24, I have Rutger McGroarty, greatest name in the draft, hands down. And I really think Minnesota needs another source of offense that isn't Kaprizov. McGroarty hasn't been consistent offensively all season, but when he does show his full potential, he can be one of the better scorers, I think, in this draft. I feel he shows a lot of potential. And at the U18s, he was put on the third line, but he was also second in goal scoring in the whole tournament. I feel like he's incredibly versatile. He can play up and down their lineup, and maybe he could even play with Kirill Kaprizov or, just be a depth scoring piece, whatever. I know that Kaprizov did give 34-year-old Matt Zuccarello a career year, so maybe they could pair together. It shows you don't have to be an elite guy to play with Kaprizov, just have good chemistry, and I think Brody could have good chemistry with his line mates.
Very good.
And that brings me on to Toronto
Yeah.
at
Who do you have my
25.
Leafs picking?
Jagger Firkus. Now, Firkus is a guy who exploded onto draft boards in the second half of the season, finishing second among first year draft eligibles in points in the WHL. Even myself, I had him ranked in like the fourth or fifth round in the mid seasons. Find a lot of scouts still putting him in the second round, early second round, but I feel like he's proven to be the most consistent and diverse offensive producer in the draft. He scores goals, he makes assists from everywhere in the offensive zone. He's like a crazy all trick pony, a jack of all trades kind of guy in the offensive zone. I think he's got all the tools. He's not limited to one style of play. And I like that. I think for Toronto, he'd be a perfect fit to their offense, whether in the top six, bottom six, or whatever, in 3 to 5 years when he does reach the NHL. I know Toronto can't keep their full roster together as is under the cap. And in 3 to 5 years, when Toronto has to make these tough decisions like re-signing Tavares, trading Nylander, maybe Bunting isn't scoring the same way, maybe he costs too much, I feel like Firkus is going to be a guy who can just enter the league, score, and bring in, that youthful competitiveness and keep their top six scoring. I can absolutely see him on the wing with Matthews and Marner one day. So
Yeah, I like that pick. I really do. Like you alluded to earlier, I have the Leafs selecting Owen Pickering, defenseman out of Swift Current, the WHL. He's 6'5", guys. 6'5", 179 pounds, 62 games, 9 goals, and 24 assists for 33 points. As far as left-hand prospects are concerned in Toronto, it's basically Rasmus Sandin at the NHL level, and there's not much else in the minors that are currently like top-tier guys. They have a few guys, obviously. But Pickering could be the next guy in the system. He has a lot of unrealized ability, I think, at this point, as he skates like he's not used to his 6'5" frame yet. It's good skate, like he's good edge control and stuff like that, but he's just not. His legs aren't quite caught up with him. And once he figures out that and how to use his size, the most effectively he can, I think he's really going to take off. He isn't going to be just some big body either. He has great puck skills and more control than you would expect from someone from his size. And yeah, like I said before, there's going to be in a few years, this is going to be seen as a year that a lot of great defensemen were picked, and Pickering will be one of those guys regardless of where he goes. Montreal.
And you might as well reveal both of ours because I believe we agree.
I do believe we do agree. I have, and you have Nathan Gaucher. At the QMJHL. And I love this player.
Montreal has not selected a player out of the QMJHL in the first round 24 years.
Wow.
24 years ago, yeah. So this will be, if they don't select a QMJHL player in the first round, it'll be 25 years since they did so. It's a long time.
Incredible. 31 goals in 66 games, 57 points for the Quebec Ramparts. 6'3", 207 pounds, is one of my favorite players in this draft. So, of course, he's going to get taken by Montreal because I'm a Leafs fan. He plays like he could already take a spot on an NHL team. Just a solid two-way center. He's not going to blow you out of the water with any flashy skills or speed. He's the definition of a safe pick. And I think because Montreal is going to have Shane Wright at number 1 and Suzuki also down the middle for the foreseeable future, Nathan Gaucher sliding into, at the worst case, a 3C role just gives me nightmares as a Leafs fan facing all three of those centers down the road in a few years. Yeah, I think he's an incredible player. I had him ranked in the mid-teens. I think 14, 15 is where I had him personally ranked, but I think he will drop probably maybe out of the first round, but I think Montreal breaks its streak of QMJHL players here.
And I'll continue with Arizona's selection at 27, where I have them selecting the Swiss defenseman playing in Sweden, Leon Bichel. Arizona has an abundance of picks, but I don't see them taking any risks with this one. I think Bichel adjusted really, really well to the pro league, both using his size and his skating. So I think he'll also adjust to the NHL just fine and be a solid, solid defensive force for Arizona to rely on through the rebuild. I feel like if Jacob Chychrun sticks around, Bichel would be like a really perfect second pair D behind him to kind of ease the pressures that Chychrun kind of has to face being on such like a crappy losing team like Arizona. And I wouldn't exactly say that Bichel fits Arizona's style, but Arizona's style has been to lose. So I think he could just be a stabilizing force.
Sorry, Arizona fans, for Alex here. I apologize. I have them also taking a defenseman. I have them here taking Seamus Casey. They're going to have a lot of picks coming up. They had a pick earlier, obviously, but they're going to start ramping up, and they start here with Seamus Casey. Right side defenseman, 5'10", 178 pounds. 48 games this year. He's an American National Team Development Program. 10 goals, 23 assists for 33 points. They'll pick a good defense prospect here, even if it's not Seamus Casey, I think. And they won't even be close to done after this. Like I said, he's committed to the University of Michigan. So another good Michigan prospect here in the NCAA to watch. That team's going to be really good again. Yeah, he's I had him ranked a lot higher earlier this year. I think I had him in my top 16 at one point, so he drops a little bit. But I still think he could be a really solid defenseman. 28 for Buffalo. I have a guy you just took. For Toronto, I have Jagger Firkus. Contender for top name in the draft. Continues to kill it, Buffalo, in my mock here. 36 goals, 44 assists for 80 points in 66 games out in Moose Jaw in the WHL. If he's able to add some strength, play a more physical game in the NHL, he could be the steal of the draft. He could be the guy we're looking at in 15 years going, how did Buffalo get him at 28? Right? He's that good. The tools he has are that good, and Buffalo's on a roll here still for me.
Mm-hmm. And 28 Buffalo for me, I have them selecting Cale Odelius, the left shot D out of Sweden. Like Arizona before them, I think that they're another team in desperate need of like a really solid, defensive force on the back end. Cale Odelius is like the modern defensive D for me. He has the speed to defend on the rush from the neutral zone, as well as the skills to just wrap it up for a quick transition. Letting the offensive talent on the team finish the play. He's not, a complete guy, but he doesn't have to be. He's so good defensively. And I feel like Buffalo has really stepped up their game offensively this year and showed that while they're not a playoff contender yet, they have a good young forward core, Tage Thompson, guys like that, and they have the ability to maybe be competitive in like 5 to 10 years kind of thing. They have like their window is there. And the problem for me is defense for them. They're still near the bottom of the league for goals against. And I feel like a solid modern defensive D like Kayla Delius is exactly what Buffalo needs to, have, a solid D for those 5 to 10 years. In their window, they'll have, a guy to keep the puck out of the net
That's
and let
really,
those offensive guys shine.
I really, really like that pick. I like this player. That's really funny you said a modern defensive defenseman, because I have that in my notes. It's like a modern defensive defenseman will lay the body if he has to, but rarely he has to because he's such a good skater, defender in the neutral zone. At most is Jacob Slavin. At worst is a serviceable bottom pairing guy that won't hurt you defensively. So it's so funny that you said it. I'm like, wow, we used the same term.
Very, very clearly, he's just so solid a defenseman that two people can see that and be like, yeah, that's who he is.
Who's Edmonton?
And that sends me to Edmonton. Actually, I'd like you to go first.
Me? Okay.
Yep.
29. The Edmonton Oilers. Alexander Paravalov. Might be a guy that people are going, really? Paravalov? I don't know. I think he's a really good player. 25 goals, 26 assists in the MHL this year. Local Yaroslavl, 44 games. Elite Prospects, shockingly, has him ranked 118th in their draft guide. I don't agree with that at all. I agree with a lot of things they say. Not that one. He has great offensive ability and obviously needs to work on his play away from the puck. But I just picture him on the left wing in the Edmonton Oilers, and it just makes so much sense to me. For no really discernible reason. He's got the skills to do it, and anyone can play with the centerman that they have, and I think he just complements them very well.
Yeah, for those unaware, he is another Russian forward. I have a scouting report on him as well, and I will say right now, Paravalov might be my favorite Russian forward this year. I love him. I'm crazy high on him myself. I think he, I know you don't like his play away from the puck, but I think his play away from the puck is one of his his best attributes.
I think it's questionable.
The only problem for me is that I think that sometimes he doesn't have the high end elite puck skills to deke guys out, and he relies more on hard work and positioning and really, really good skating, to put himself in a scoring position rather than, trying to deke out 4 defenders. He doesn't do any of that, but at the same time, I think there's a smart game. He doesn't need those skills, and they'll translate well to the NHL. But I have Edmonton selecting a different Russian, Vladimir Grudinin, the left shot D, but this is my asterisk pick, and I'll explain. Montreal has 10 picks in the first 4 rounds. Seattle has 9 picks in the first 4 rounds. Arizona has 8 picks in the first 4 rounds, and Edmonton has 1. This is their only pick in the first 4 rounds. I've heard rumors that Edmonton might move Tyson Barrie to clear up some space, maybe get a pick, but despite that, I think Ken Holland is going to be working the phones to turn this pick maybe into 2 seconds. And, 1 pick in the first 4 rounds is a gamble, and if they select a guy who doesn't pan out, I think it could just look as a huge failure for the organization. In my perfect world, we're actually both right. That the Edmonton Oilers trade down, and with those 2 seconds, select both Vladimir Grudinin and Alexander Paravalov. But I also genuinely believe that Grudinin would just be a good, perfect pick here at 29. He's a very serviceable defenseman. I think he has crazy, crazy, crazy upside. Maybe not too much offensive upside, but I feel like his style of play as a puck-moving D, he can get the puck from the defensive zone right through the neutral zone with so much speed that, Connor McDavid's a guy who scores at that kind of speed, that he'd be a great fit for Edmonton. So that's my little Edmonton spiel.
That's a great logic. I love that.
Mm-hmm. I'd love to see them get both, and that we're both right. How we're usually both wrong. So.
Yeah, maybe we'll switch it up. Switch it up and both be right. You take it away here for Winnipeg, since
Winnipeg,
you
yeah.
gave me 29.
Winnipeg they've been left. I have them selecting Seamus Casey, the right shot D out of the USDP. You have him at 27th. Winnipeg has been left bare defensively over the years. Trouba, Sherratt, Myers, Buffligan, they've all lost. Like they've lost key defensemen over the years, and I feel like it's kind of exposed Josh Morrissey. He was, kind of, had this potential to be maybe a top D, and I feel like with all the pressure he's under, he hasn't been able to. It's also exposed their goaltender. Connor Hellebuck hasn't been the same, and subsequently just kind of dropped out of playoff contention. Where other teams have gotten better, they've kind of stagnated and gotten really worse compared to the rest of the league. I don't think Seamus Casey is the answer, but I do believe he can be part of the long-term solution and be paired with a guy that they have like Logan Stanley, via Heinola, and really stabilize and elevate their future defensive core. So it's not just Morrissey trying to one-man army at all.
Yeah, I agree in the sense that I've already have Seamus Casey picked, but I agree that they need a defenseman in the worst kind of way. Mm-hmm. So I have them taking Liam Bichelle here. You have him being picked at 27, and I have Casey there, and we've swapped them.
We flipped.
So we both see the need here for a defenseman. 6'5", 225 pounds, strong for his age. Played mostly in the SHL for Leksand's IF. I've watched a lot of their games this year because I'm a fan of their goalie, Kazimir Kaskasuo. 29 games played, 1 goal, 2 assists for 3 points. But I watched him in the World Juniors, right? As short as they were, I could see Bichelle's whole future, guys. He's got the reach on that 6'5" frame and the skating ability at his size to be one of the better shutdown defensemen in NHL in a few years. Not a top pairing guy, but a really good maybe 3-4 that plays a specific role. He plays us with a significant amount of snarl too that will translate very well to the NHL and the pro level. I think he's pretty unique when you look at him compared to the rest of his D class, which may cause him to jump up the board a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him in the early to mid 20s instead of late here at 30. He didn't look out of place, like I said, in 29 games in the SHL, but he's going to need a few more years, I think, to mature before he gets a spot on Winnipeg. But I think he could be an incredible pick for that team, especially if they start thinking about a rebuild. He could be one of the first guys, one of their first prospects that they have after their quote unquote rebuild. Bear fruit. So I really like this player. I think he could be really, really good, and Winnipeg needs defense so badly, dude. Mm-hmm. Who do we have here? 31.
On to me for Tampa. We do have Tampa and Arizona italicized because it's a toss-up. The Stanley Cup Finals are not over.
No.
But it doesn't change my opinion on who they select, so you can swap these two picks, in my opinion. I think for you as well, that they just select who they do.
Yeah, a little.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would end up actually flipping my picks, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. As of today, Colorado is leading the series 3-1, so we're going to assume that they win the Stanley Cup and pick 32nd. Who do they have at 31 for Tampa?
I have them selecting Juraj Kulik, the center out of the Czech Republic. There really isn't much you can say about need for the back-to-back champions, but maybe a third time. We'll see. Colorado is leading in the series, so I thought I'd keep it simple, especially considering this isn't Tampa's only pick in the first 3 rounds. They have a little bit more options. Oh, this is the only pick that they have, so I picked somebody who's more reliable, I think. He's a dependable center. Kulik, and Tampa Bay has a knack of getting the absolute best out of these kind of smart, dependable forwards. You got Palat, Killorn, Cirelli, now Ross Colton, and I think that adding a player like him would make it easier maybe to move a veteran out and clear up some desperately needed cap space. Palat's making near 5, Killorn's making near 5, Cirelli's making near 5. Actually, Palat is now a UFA, but he could make even more. And, just to clear up some cap space, I think Juraj Kulik is a guy who could just be another one like that.
And I completely agree. I just think he fits too well with Tampa Bay Lightning. I think they're going to have a little bit of a steal with him here. 9 goals, 5 assists, 14 points in the Czech League. Yeah, like I said, I think I would flip 31 and 32 if it ends up that Tampa. I think Kulik goes before. Anyway, doesn't matter. Like you said, just a guy that Tampa needs. Solid, possibly bottom six guy. Motor never turns off when he's on the ice and plays with good energy and intensity while also possessing some underappreciated, I think, offensive abilities. Didn't get a whole lot of offense. He's playing in the men's league. So Tampa always seems to pull guys out of thin air. Cirelli a couple of years ago, Yanni Gord, Ross Colton. They just start pulling fake players creative players out of nowhere. So I think Kulik is going to be the next in that line of good depth guys that they end up getting.
And who do you have the final pick in the first round? Arizona selecting.
I have a guy that we talked about a little bit that you are not a huge fan of, Owen Beck. I have Arizona taking him as the last pick in the first round. 6 foot frame, 190 pounds, 68 games this year for Mississauga of the OHL, 21 goals and 30 assists. Just a very well-rounded centerman that plays well in his own end. Reminds me a little bit, we just talked about him, a little bit of Anthony Cirelli. Maybe lacking that kind of high-end skill, but just plays a solid game that I think is worthy of being a first-round selection here, especially for Arizona, who has 4 more picks in the next 13 slots.
Now, I agree with your scouting on Owen Beck. He's definitely more of like a defensive zone. I see him going hard in the corners, forcing turnovers, but the upside, I don't see the top 6 offensive upside, and I think they're just better players in the OHL. I've had an opportunity to see Beck live play against Barry once. I've seen him the video as well, but there's just something that I don't see. There's a reason why he's the second line in Mississauga behind a guy like Luca Del Belbaluz, that there's just a skill missing that I think he needs to be in the first round, that I have him in my second instead. But for me, Arizona, my final pick, Isaac Howard. You have him higher, I have him lower. You probably want to take him closer to 32.
Yep.
I'm not huge on him. I think he cherry picks. He just waits in the neutral zone for the play to come to him, which means that he's not using his speed or his skill to beat defenders. He's cheating. And I think it's a really bad habit, and it's not going to work at the NHL level, where defense is just way tighter. You can't cheat in the NHL like you can in juniors. That being said, the biggest obstacle for him becomes himself and his style of play. He does possess, speed and skill, I think, to kind of work and overcome those flaws and become a more complete player, but he chooses not to. And I don't know if Arizona is the right team to work to get the good habits into him, but I also know that if he does put it together, he could just, skill-wise, he might be able to break the top 16 in this draft if he had his game all together. But, other than that, we're questioning why even have him in the first round when he can't. There is a good reason why, he led the U18 team. He led the US in points, so I still have him in the first round personally, but maybe only because Arizona has so many picks that they can take a little bit of a risk on a guy like him. It kind of reminds me of Sasha Pastujov, his draft stock. Dropped to the 3rd round. Good offensive guy, but just doesn't have all the rest of the tools.
Yeah, and I'll just show everyone a picture. That concludes our mock draft. That's all 32 picks here. Going through everyone in the first round. Let us know what you guys think about what we did, about what you guys would pick. Who do we have that we're completely overlooking? Let us know. Join us again in a few days. We're going to do the entirety of the second round as well, which is the first on this channel. And join us live for when we're going to live stream here on the Pokemon YouTube channel the entirety of the first round, and probably a good chunk. We got to like the 5th or 6th round before we called it quits last year on our live stream. Yeah, come hang out. It's a good time. We just chill and talk hockey. It's going to be dope. We have a lot of fun just chilling, hanging with you guys. And yeah, if you made it this far, thanks so much for making it this far. That's awesome. The long video. We always do these really long mock draft videos talking hockey. And yeah, Anything I have to say here, Alex, before we end
No,
it?
that's it for us. We're Dopamon. We talk hockey news, analysis. We got mock drafts and scouting reports. Please check all of those out if you've reached this far in the video. I've got a few more coming out. For a guy that I have in the second round, I want to have a scouting report out for him. So I'm having a lot of fun doing them, putting in a lot of work, and I love hockey. If you love hockey, you should just go watch it.
See you guys next time. Peace out.